Hello, everybody. Today we are going to talk about think before you buy, kind of getting behind the strategy before deploying AI. I'll kind of bring you some things from the field of things I've seen other companies do, some mistakes, some missteps, and hopefully, if you're wherever you're at in this journey, that hopefully this will help you kind of get on that path. And again, I'll try and talk about there's different pockets you might be in or different places. So these will have different things. So I'm going to be bringing up kind of things not necessarily in order to start with, but towards the end we're going to kind of bring it all together so that it makes kind of sense in an order, because you got to have some sort of order. This is me. I'm Mike Luttenberger. I am a field CTO here at Netrix that covers all things AI and data. So again, that's what we're going to talk about today. I've been working with AI for a while now, and I use all of the different LLMs. So let's get into it. Strategy over execution. This has to be a thing. And again, I've seen this kind of evolve over the past, 2 or 3 years with folks. Some were like just kind of jumping right in because AI was the hot thing and they just jumped right in. Um, and then now I've seen it more cautiously or more tactically, kind of taking a step back, right? And kind of getting your battle plan out. And how I liken this to say is think of this as a house, right? You're going to build this house. AI is your new house. You're not going to just start buying and ordering 2x4s and nails and start hammering stuff together without having that blueprint, right? You don't know what you're going to build yet, how many bathrooms, how many bedrooms, all that fun stuff, right? Because you need to understand what you're building. If I'm going to order a roof, what's the square footage, all this fun stuff, right? So think of this as no different as that. We have to have our strategy before we start going down this path. Like I said, though, I'm not naive to understand that there are some folks that have already been in it and now they're kind of taking a pause, right? And saying, okay, maybe we need to take a step back, or all I'm going to try and arm you with is kind of my take or my strategy that I think you should absolutely look at, and the order that it should go in, my opinion. Don't start with the LLM. So this is when I hear, and again, there's an asterisk here, right? Some folks are already there, so we'll talk about that. But don't start with the LLM before you've started anything, and those are kind of the folks I'm talking to right now. If you have nothing going on today, don't start here. And the reason for this, or why I like to say this, is every LLM is different. They offer different qualities. You need to understand what you're trying to do first, right? Which we're going to talk about in a second. You need to understand what you're trying to do with AI. If you're a law firm, are there certain things with contracts, or are you development heavy, right? Where you're writing code? Those are different things, and not all LLMs are created equal. Each of them bring certain things that I think are better than others, right? ChatGPT offers things that perhaps Claude doesn't. And again, as at the time of this, Claude is kind of what I would consider the king of code, right? So if that is something that you're thinking about doing, that's it. But that doesn't necessarily mean that that's exactly where you should go just yet. If that's one person in the organization, perhaps. Again, we'll talk about that of multiple LLMs if possible. But I hear this a lot. I bought said name, right? And probably a great one. Again, this is a real customer story. Came to me and said, I just bought ChatGPT Enterprise for the entire organization. And I'm like, cool. What was kind of the deciding factor in ChatGPT that you went with? And he told me, well, on YouTube, I saw this really cool thing where they were making all these videos with, Sora. I'm like, that is pretty cool. Those are pretty neat looking. I go, is that like kind of the business you guys are in? Like, you guys are making all sorts of videos like that, like marketing videos? Like, no, not at all. And I'm like, well, why was that the deciding factor for it, right? And he's like, I just thought it was really cool. And again, I hear this a lot, right? I think it does a really cool thing. I saw this, I mean, come on, they're all trying to get you guys to buy their LLM. So of course they're going to show you all these really cool things. But what you need to come down to reality is that thing they're showing you something that you as an organization are going to do and utilize, right? If it is, then great. That probably is the thing for you. But you need to understand that piece first. And again, these are not all created equal. They have different integration points within different pieces, right? That if you're a big Microsoft shop, natively Copilot is just there and it does things for you, right? That the others won't do because of it's wired into your email and all this stuff. And again, Copilot uses something called the graph, which understands your meetings and all that fun stuff. But if you're in the Google space, Google Workspace, right, it makes sense that you're probably using Gemini around that, because that is tightly integrated into Gmail and sheets and all that fun stuff, right? So it's don't, pick it just because it did a cool thing. Tactically think of how we're going to do that. But one of the things, like I said, if you're in the Microsoft shop space, it probably makes sense that you look at Copilot to start. If you're in Google space, it probably makes sense that you start looking at Gemini. If you're in neither of those, then you're going to want to get some use cases of why you might want to go with a Copilot or a Gemini or a Claude or an Anthropic or OpenAI. Sorry, with that. So don't start with the LLM. You want to get some use cases, which we're going to talk about in a second, around why you're going to pick the particular LLM of your choosing. So this one, it changes, right? AI is changing. This is kind of how I look at it, is that it changes every 3 months, where I call them cycles. So every 3 months there's cycles, but then we have 6 month super cycles. What do I mean by that? So, and this is all of them. All the LLMs do this. So there is a period to where over the next 3 months, all of them will gain some additional features or capabilities. But within the next 6 months, it's going to be almost like a totally new product because it has all these new features. And again, I've seen this with every single one of them, from Copilot to ChatGPT to Claude to Gemini. All of them have taken these drastic kind of changes in 6 months, and then all these micro changes in there. So my point of talking about this is it kind of ties back off of that other slide, because if you're picking from an LLM of what it does, right the second, that's probably going to change in a couple months, right? Of that. And also don't think too far out into the future of what that's going to be. I've heard a lot of people to say, like, give me a 2-year plan of AI. Like, that's not even possible, because I promise you by summer it's going to do something totally different that it can't even do today, that you would most likely want to be on your radar, that you would probably push out for a year or two, but now you could bring it back as close as the summer. So keep that in mind within that. But that's one of those things to think about, is this stuff is evolving. You have to have things around it that kind of go with the evolving of this. And again, I've been in IT since 1998. I have never seen anything like this move as fast as this does, with the capabilities that it does so quickly. It is truly remarkable and astounding to just witness this and even try and keep up with all of this, right? This stuff is changing all the time. New features and capabilities like Claude, I feel like every other day there's some new update to it, new capabilities. So the stuff is changing a lot within there. So keep that in mind. Is your data ready for AI? This is, I would say, probably the two most overlooked things that I have worked with customers to kind of either uncover or kind of let them know, this is something they need to consider. So let me give you some scenarios, right? Of where or why this is bad. So let's first start talking about the stale data one. So why is this a bad thing? So again, I have lots of customers who are like, oh, like, and again, I'll just use, say, Copilot for this example of, hey, I want to start using Copilot, so I want to get all this stuff in SharePoint. So I'm just going to take all my file shares and just bring it all over, right? Because we want to go as fast as possible in AI. Problem. The problem with that is, now that AI is looking at your data sets, right? If you have stale data, it's not going to come back right. So let me give you a scenario. So the scenario could be, let's say HR has, what they do is they take like a policy from the previous year, they make a copy of it, they call it the New Year's policy, and they tweak some things in that policy, and then each year they do that, right? So technically, let's just like 2020, right? And then they made a copy of it called the 2021. They tweaked some policy language or added some new policy, changed some, updated it. Cool. Now that's 2021. 2022 comes around, they make a copy of that, change some things, call that 22. You get the idea, right? So now we're in 2026. So now we have, all of these years worth of policies that we've never removed, right? That are just copies sitting there of slightly different ones over the years. Well, if we have this on a file share and we bring this into an environment and now we point AI at it, a few things are going to happen here. One, you're going to get inconsistent data when you ask, right? I might just say, what is our travel policy? Now, I could mitigate that if I knew that there was a bunch of different versions in there, say, give me the most recent, right? And it will look at 2026. However, most users aren't going to prompt that way. And, they don't think that way of say, oh, well, I need to think of, tell me get the most current one, because there's years worth in there, right? They just think of the kind of the latest and greatest is the only thing in there. So you don't want your users having to do that. But let's go down that scenario. And a user says, tell me what the travel policy is. And maybe in 2022 it was $500, but in 2024 you've reduced it to 200. Well, when I ask AI, one day it might bring me back, that older policy and say, hey, you got 500, or maybe it brings me 2025s and it says no 200. I don't know, because every time I ask it, it's probably going to give me a different answer based off of which one it is looking at the particular moment. Um, so that's where the problem lies, because now a couple things are going to happen. Let's pretend I go down this path, right? And I am a user and I go in there and I say, hey, what's our policy on travel? And it comes back and it says $500 because it pulled an older one. It pulled the 2021 one. Okay, cool. I'm like, awesome, because that's what AI is supposed to do for me, right? It's supposed to give me the info and then I go about my day. So very cool. I got my answer. It's $500. I go and I book my trip. It's a work trip and I, expense the $500. And then next month it comes back rejected. And I say, why did it get rejected? Well, our travel policy is 200. Remember, it changed in 2024 or 25, right? And it's like, but AI told me that it was 500, right? So you can run into HR issues with it if the stale data is in there. You can run into just trust issues, right? Now me as an employee think, well, I can't really trust AI because when I ask it, it's always bringing me different answers of our policy, or it gave me the wrong one. So that's why stale data is no good in AI. You have to have kind of what I like to say the single source of truth thing, is that if you do have a policy on, your policy document, there has to be one, right? You have to have that one for it to look at. So that is key to think about before all the stuff, right? Before you've picked the LLM and all that fun stuff, you have to have good data in there. And then also, when you're looking at an LLM, or you're thinking about an LLM or thinking about AI, how is this going to access? What is this going to access? Do we want it to access everything, right? Again, I don't know the answer to that. That's up for you to decide. Some customers say, you know what? A great example is some law firms. I have some law firms I work with where certain policies they have that say, no, you can use AI for everything. I have certain law firms that say you can use it for anything except for customer stuff, right? Customer data. So I would not give access to that customer data to AI. Again, if that's within your policies and whatnot. So these are things to consider within there. And then also we could even go a little bit layer deeper, but I don't think it's necessarily for this, but is if you are going to have it access all of your data, that data has to be a certain way, right, within there. You just don't want to just point it at all the things and hope that AI is going to make sense of it all, right? So there's going to have to be some structuring that we would want to look at around that data. But these are two overlooked things that we've seen, over the past, 2.5 to 3 years with customers, that they just get in there like, AI isn't doing anything for me, or it's always bringing back the wrong info. And we start digging into the data. It's like you have duplicates of all sorts of stuff and they're out of date. This one's from this year. And so again, it's not AI. That's AI is just looking at what it has access to, or what the data is that is in there. So just want to make sure that these 2 points are considered, right? That you're thinking about this ahead of time within it. Again, a couple things here. So we're going to kind of go into all of those, but these are crucial pieces of it, right? And these are kind of varying steps of it, of when you're kind of getting in there. But this is kind of the baseline. What I say is these are things you got to have, or have thought of. First and foremost, we'll kind of go on the bottom left here. Company AI policy. You have to have one. You have to have the rules of engagement for your employees. Have to create that, because I promise you, they will do things that they shouldn't with it, right? But just a simple policy of what you should and should not do. Again, talking about some of the law firms, right? To say, you can't use this for customer data, or you can. Having that, the rules of engagement for AI is important in there, right? Or if you decide that, hey, we've decided on this LLM and nothing else, that should be in there, right? So that users know they shouldn't be using some other LLM for their work, right? That only the company approved one. Then you want some sort of technical guardrails. And again, this could go back to what I was saying about picking an LM. I have some customers that are just like, nope, it could be open. They can kind of use whatever they want. I have others that are like, no, we as a company made a policy that said you can only use Copilot, or you can only use ChatGPT, or whatever that thing is, right? And that is it. So the other ones should be looked at as being blocked. And again, there's lots of things out there, right? Like Defender for Endpoint and things like that, that could block those things, or even firewalls, right? To where you could block a chat GPT or a Claude if you, again, decide that you want to do Copilot, right? And that is your LLM of choice. So you want to have these kind of what I would consider like guardrails or technical guardrails, blocking certain AI sites or software from the users, right? Even if you don't want them like, downloading these EXEs of Claude or whatever on there. So that's important, right? Of that piece of that there are technical guardrails ahead of this stuff. The next piece is the security and governance, right? Of that piece. We don't want access to everything, right? A great example is if you're, you know, whether you're in Google Sites or you're in SharePoint, right? I don't want to have all access to every employee within, let's say, the HR site as the example, right? And we see this a lot where, we say, security through obscurity, meaning that if I put it deep enough into a site, no one's going to find it. I'm the only one that knows that that's there. And that might be true today. But things will change. Once you turn AI on, I promise you they're going to be able to find it, right? And the example I always give is, if you're using something like, again, a Google Sites or a SharePoint, and what that is mostly doing without AI is it's looking for keywords, right? So the example I always like to give is a 401k document. If I have a 401k document in my site and it's not tagged, any metadata is tagged with benefits, the document itself doesn't have the word benefits in it. If I go in there and I type in benefits, I probably won't find that document because they are relying on keywords at that point in time. The second I turn on AI, that is a whole different animal because it's context aware of what I'm asking. So if I ask for it and I say, give me the list of our benefits, that 401k document will absolutely pop because AI is aware that 401k is a benefit. So that is the difference between that, because you will find that users start finding things they normally never could because it was previously looking for keywords. Those days are gone. Now it's context aware of what you're asking. It will 100% find those things. So you want to make sure that if you have those files in there, right, that they are either encrypted or, again, even just kind of access removed from users around that data, because you don't want them using AI with perhaps user or customer data like that in there. So understanding the kind of security model around those things, as I like to say, I like to get the Goldilocks of it, where you don't want it so restrictive that users can't do anything in the environment, because I promise you they will find a way to do it outside of the environment, which they always do. Um, but you also don't want it where it's the wild, wild west, and then people are just, there's no governance, there's no security, and people are just doing whatever, because that's again a security nightmare for your organization. So you have to strike that balance between, the Goldilocks of governance, security within there, within reason. And again, also on the security topic and governance is if you are in a regulated, group, right, to where maybe you're in healthcare and there are certain things you have to do from an auditing perspective or with your data, you have to have that when it comes to AI too, right? Because you will get audited eventually on that. And the last one is never, ever, ever release AI into your environment without training and communications around it. Again, I can give you horror stories of customers to that just, hey, I think AI is easy, so we're just going to send that email out that says, hey, everybody, you got access to this LLM, go nuts. And let's not kid ourselves, like 50% of the people in most organizations don't even read the corporate email that comes through, so that kind of gets lost on them. And again, well, I think once you get into AI, it is very easy, right, to prompt and all that stuff. You generally don't do that right off the get. I mean, I didn't do that, right? When I first started using ChatGPT, when it first came out a little over 3 years ago, I was essentially using it as Google, right, as an internet search. And I was like, why would I pay for this? Like, I don't get AI. Like, it's just like bringing back internet results to me, because I was in that old mindset of, keywords, because that's what we've done. We've trained ourselves to just use these keywords and then it pulls back the stuff I want. AI doesn't want keywords. It wants big, long sentences and paragraphs. And I want to know a persona and what task you want me to do? What format do you want me to do? What tone do you want me to use? All of these things are important in AI. And if your users don't know how to do it, they're not getting the most out of AI. And again, this is an expense. It's somewhere between, $17 to $30 a license. And you want to make sure that they're using it to its full capacity. So it is important that your users are trained and the communications of releasing AI in the environment are there. It is important that they know it's coming. Have a campaign around it, right? T minus 30 days. Here's an email communication, or even some sort of, lunch and learn or webinar internally about this. Again, whatever that might be. And then 2 weeks out, 1 week out, right? Those types of things. Again, we help with those things. I'll talk about that at the end. So this one floats around quite a bit. And again, I could tell you lots of real horror stories from customers of things where I've heard, um, we've had a pilot going on for 6 months. I don't know how you can have a pilot going on for 6 months, right? I have heard, I have 40 pilots around AI going on. I don't know how you could have 40 pilots going on in AI, right? Those types of things. And again, what I have seen, what we have seen is there's no measurement of ROI, right? Lots of places will just get it and then they're trying to quantify now this new expense, right? Over the course of a month or a year, right? Now we've just signed on for this new thing. What am I getting back from AI, right? What is that thing? And they can't quantify it. There's no measurement of ROI before they've kind of gone down this adventure. Again, no use case development. And that's for generally the pilot. And again, that's where we go with when we have 50 or 60 pilots is there was no use case. It was just, hey, here's AI, go figure some stuff out that we might use it for. That is not a use case, figuring out, right? There is no tactical movement to that. What is your outcome or goal, right, with the AI usage? Again, a lot of that is we just turn it on, let it rip, and we're not sure what we're getting back with this. No test plan, right, around that, especially when we're talking about the pilot. You should be able to get in and out of a pilot within just a couple weeks to figure out whether it's going to work or not, right? You should not be doing a pilot in AI for 6 months, right? If there is some RFP process that you're trying to work out that you're trying to see that AI can do for you, you should not be doing this 6 months, right? You should have a solution in 6 months. You shouldn't be piloting. You should have your test plan of these are the things we need to make sure this can do, if this is even viable right now, right? And again, some of these use cases might not be viable today with what AI currently can do. Now, that might be a different conversation come summer. Again, this goes back to the one of the slides where it says there's 3-month cycle, 6-month super cycle. It might be able to do that in the future. And I can't tell you countless times on this where I've worked with customers and it's like, yeah, AI won't do this. And then 3 months later, guess what? It does it now. So those types of things you need to keep in mind. But you have to have that test plan to say that this is a success or a failure. Or when we say, you know what, these things that didn't make it, so we're pulling the plug right now on this pilot. This is something we'll revisit later, or this is just something AI isn't going to do for us. Understand that. And then the last one is lack of AI knowledge. And what I mean by that is I see a lot of times where um, a pilot will kind of fall under an IT right department and maybe they don't know AI. So to them, it's just like, I'm going to like turn this thing on and give it to finance and, like, let me know if it worked out for you. Kind of not having that AI expert or the knowledge to kind of drive it and say like, well, this is what you should be testing. Here's how you should be prompting, all that fun stuff. So you have to get that. These are kind of the list of things you have to measure, right? To make sure that you're going to have a successful pilot within there if you eventually go down that route. But again, I will argue that you need some of these, right, before you even deploy AI. And again, use case is one of them. We'll talk about that a little bit more. So again, where does the value lie? As I like to say, don't just pick these things just randomly, right? Where is kind of the pain point here? Is it something that's customer facing? Is it back office stuff? Like what are we trying to solve for, right? Are we getting more operational efficiencies, or perhaps we're in, retail, or we're in, a space of nonprofit to where maybe we're relying on sales or even donations. So maybe that's more customer facing type of things that we're trying to solve for. So where the value lies depends on everybody on this session is going to have either themselves or even their organization that the value is going to lie somewhere, right? I would not say it's everybody is the same, everything is the cookie cutter. It is not. And again, I get that a lot. I have a customer that they'll meet and they say, just give me a bunch of use cases that tell me where AI can help me. I have no idea. I have no idea where it will help you because I don't know exactly what you do and how you do it, right? I could have, and I have, I've had 3 separate banks come to me, right? To where they're like, kind of walk us through this AI thing. And their output or their solution at the end were 3 totally different ones because they all did things slightly different. And we'll just kind of take the back office as that. From a back office perspective, all 3 banks, even though they were doing similar type things, they were doing them drastically different, which meant that AI was going to be drastically different at how it was implemented in those 3 scenarios or those 3 organizations. So there is no silver bullet. A lot of people think that oh, because I'm in, if I'm in this industry, whether it's legal or again retail or banking, that there's just this universal AI agent or thing that's just gonna can be applied to everybody. Not the case. It isn't. Um, while the output of that is right, but how we get there is very different based off of how the organization works, if that makes sense, right? That there is obviously something that every bank does the same, or the output is the same of what they need, but it will be built very differently based off of how they do their day-to-days, right? And that's where AI is great because it can kind of weave into that, right? To where you don't have to necessarily think about, well, I have to change how I do my work now because of AI. No, it's one of those things that helps you kind of enhance the way that you're doing things today, augment those a little bit. So again, these are, like I said, in no particular order. I'm just kind of bringing some things out towards the end. We're going to kind of wrap it all together of what I think is kind of a successful order to do these things. And again, some of you may have already done some of these things, so it might that step one might not relate to you, but the others will, if that makes sense. But I hear this a lot, right? A customer will come in and say, I want an AI agent built on said thing. And the example I'll give you is like perhaps making, RFPs or something like that, or responding to RFPs. Again, very good one. I deal with RFPs. I know how those could be time suck, right? How those could be. But the problem is the next question I say is, well, what is the AI literacy of the whole organization? And generally speaking, I hear none. Nobody has it. We don't even have AI. This is we're dipping our toe into AI with this solution. And I caution a lot of customers to not go down that route for a couple reasons. One, what is this solving? How many people is this going to touch? And generally, let's just use the RFP example. It's like 3 people, right? So again, I'm sure it makes their lives easy, right? And more efficient, but where you're not getting a big bang for your buck or a big ROI on that. Yes, it may save 20 hours collectively through that, right? It might save 20 hours out of the 3 that respond to RFPs. And again, not that that is small potatoes, it's not, but I would argue if you gave AI literacy to your organization as a whole, that even taking something as saving everybody in the organization just 5 minutes will overshadow that 20 hours in like that, right? So that's why I caution that. The other reason is how you think about going about that RFP as this example is the old way of thinking. And what I mean by that is once your users learn AI and are fluent in AI and understand AI and how it works and how it can help them, they wouldn't approach the way you're doing the RFP today that way, right? So when you build this AI agent around RFPs, you are thinking in the ways of the old of how you did things. Once you get AI literate, you attack everything in the business very differently. And then you look at that and say, I never would have built this way because we do AI now, and that's like the old way of thinking. So I don't want to say it's a throwaway work, but sometimes it can be, right? Because you look at this whole different process of how you can do RFPs before making that single purpose agent around that. So those are some things I caution you about. I'm not saying you can't be successful going down and picking an agent and saying we're going to do that first for an organization, but I will tell you from experience, those are very few and far between. That those become successful once a whole organization gets on board with AI, understands it, gets trained on it, knows how to prompt, all those fun things. You have a much bigger bang for your buck on that within there. So keep that in mind. And again, just kind of give you like the math of that is let's just say the 5 minutes thing, right? Let's say I have an organization of 100 people, right? And let's say that there's some task that gets done 20 times a week, and all of us are saving 5 minutes on it, right? So let's just use me as the example. Let's say it's like meetings, and AI is helping me save 5 meetings on my meetings, and I have 20 meetings a week. Over the course of the year, it's like 17.3 or something like that hours, right? I know that doesn't sound earth shattering, right? But this is one individual. Now let's take that and drop that over, 100 users, right? Let's just say that for math. Now that one 5 minute task across the whole organization of 100 is now 1,700 hours over the year, right? So you can see how quickly that can add up. And that just having AI literacy for 100 people is going to be so much more ROI than that single purpose agent. That's kind of just the point I'm getting at with this is that it is a force multiplier on your users. So cut through the noise, as I like to say. Start with the problem, not the solution. So again, starting with the solution is generally when someone picks an LLM, which we talked about first, right? Don't do that. What is the problem? What are we trying to solve for, right? Um, is it something that just takes a lot of time, right? We're trying to sell more things. Perhaps we need to get things out the door quicker. Is that what we're trying to solve for? Because then we're going to work backwards from that, right? On our solution. That this is the output. Our output is that we're going to get out documents quicker, right? Or again, to speak to the RFP one, we're going to respond to RFPs. Now it takes us 2 weeks. We would like it to take 8 hours, right? As that might be your goal. Start with that and work backwards from the problem to figure out what you're going to do. And again, so a lot of this comes into play, right? So you have to evaluate what your data availability and quality is. Again, we talked about that earlier, right? Data cleanliness, data, not having stale data, and all that fun stuff. Required accuracy levels around that. So that could determine which model you pick. And again, a lot of these will allow you to go with different models, and those carry different tokens. Don't even want to get into that. That's a whole topic on its own. We could probably do a whole nother session on that. But you need to understand what that is, right? Of what is the required accuracy? Does it have to be the absolute most exact one thing, or can it stray a little bit from that? Does it have to be accuracy? Because that's the difference between going from a model of like ChatGPT 5.5 versus going with a 4.0 mini model, right? So those are two different prices of tokens, but do I need that level? Is it doing a lot of computation or things, or is it just a ticketing system, almost an AI ticketing system where it's responding to things? Probably not. You could probably go lower. So understanding that, again, making sure security and compliance is in there. Again, resource availability. That's do I have the people that can do this, or do they even have the time to test this? Understanding that piece of it, and again, understanding what you're going to go into from that piece. Again, assess what's the impact potential. We have to have the ROI. Why are we going to do this? Why are we going to do this pilot, right? I talked about that. Yeah, that couple slides back with the 95%. These are the things you have to understand. What am I saving by doing this? What am I saving by going down this route? Again, I'll just pick on the RFP thing. What are we looking to save? Is it that 20 hours, right? Over the course of 3 people? Is that worth this, right? Because there's times that we've gone down this and done this kind of formula or this exercise where we found that AI and building it was actually probably going to cost more than them just manually doing it. Again, not every case is like that. I would argue a lion's share of it, AI is going to cut it down significantly. But there are times that there are things that it's just faster for the human to do it, right? Or there's already a semi-good process in place that just keep doing that, right? Because now once we go and build and the license of the RO, of the LLM, and then also having tokens and all that fun stuff, if you're going down that route, it costs more than the person to actually just do what they were doing before. So again, it understands that, understand those things. What is kind of the scale? What is the impact this is going to make? What is the time that we're going to get to value? Again, if it's going to take us, 2 years of development, our time to value is probably not there. We might want to just shelve that one and say, when AI gets better for this thing, then we'll look at that right now. But right now, it's going to take too much development time to do that. So you got to understand that. And again, strategic importance. This is looking at kind of the whole holistically looking at how does this plug into everything else that we're doing, right? Does this even make sense? And then again, what's the technical feasibility of it, right? Can we really pull this thing off? Can we do it? Do we got to hire a Netrix or something like that to come in? What is the value of it, right? Those types of things. And again, all of this comes in, all of these things have to be considered before we've even put hands on keyboard yet, right? All of this stuff. This is kind of my, right? How I like to think about it, or kind of the way I like to go it, right? Go about it, go it. First, as you see on our left here, is we have the use case, right? What is the use? We have to have a use case. We have to have that. We cannot just build just to build. We cannot, and we should not. We are wasting money. We are wasting time and resources to do that. What is the use case? What are we trying to solve for, right? And then that kind of moves into the next piece, right? To where we'll finalize that business case. And now we have to measure what is our success criteria. Where do we need to pull the plug on this and say, this is not going to work. This is a failure. I don't want to be here for 6 months doing a pilot, right? what does my success criteria look like around this, right? When do I say, okay, this is good, we can roll this out now, or we need to go deeper into this? Um, then we're going to look at what is the models, right, that we're looking at. Where does this fit in here? Is this something that a Claude can do? Or again, if you're in the Microsoft space, you could look at, hey, Copilot maybe can't do this. So then you could look at a Foundry, right, where it could do a lot more things around that and use other models, right, as the example within there. Then again, making sure that the security and compliance is all part of this, right? Making sure that if we have something around that that says we can't use customer data as the example, that the solution is following that, right? Because the last thing we want to do is put all these rules and policies in place and then have it fall apart because of this, right? That we're trying to build something and now we have to kind of weave outside of that. Well, now we're going against kind of our policy and whatever rules we put in place. Then we have to look at kind of the policy of that piece, and that's the responsible AI consideration, right? Is what you're doing with this the responsible thing? Is it non-biased? Is it all that fun stuff, right? If you're looking for, maybe you're in HR and you're having it scan resumes, right? Is it having the responsible AI consideration around the things that you do that you can keep using it in a safe manner within your organization? Then you come to the proof of value, right, of it. What is that? And all of these things should lead to that proof of value of what is this thing going to cost us? What is this thing, the output? What is the true savings of this going to happen? That is your decision point. You still haven't done anything yet, right? This is more of the kind of investigating of this. We haven't done anything, built anything. This is our decision point now. This is where we say, this is worth building or this is not. We're going to shelve this one for now. We'll look at it in a couple months. Maybe there will be some new enhancements because it can't follow all these things that we were looking for yet. And then we stop. But if we do and we say, yes, let's move forward, then we begin developing it, right? And then we look at deploying it and then maintenance of it. Again, another misconception. Lots of folks think that I'm going to build this agent, I'm going to release it, and we're done. Not true. These things need some care. They need to get modified. You will look at the way that things are being built and used and prompted and whatnot, and it will change how you're doing things. And again, I'll give you an example. Had a customer and working with them, and they came to us because they were looking for some help with some agents because they went down a really bad path. And the problem they had was they built an agent, and their only testing kind of criteria was within the IT department. So IT knew AI, so they were prompting it a very specific way, right? And one of the things was the token usage, right? So they had it all under control. They're like, okay, we've tested this thing for about 2 weeks now, and we could pretty much guarantee what the tokens are going to cost now. Then they released it. No pilot, no nothing. Again, I strongly recommend you do a pilot. Also, I think that you should kind of expand this development on users who are really part of that, right? Of what that's going to fix. Well, now their tokens went through the roof and they were beginning to look at the data now. Again, IT had a very narrow focus of how they were going to do it, and they really didn't have a good test plan on that of what that was. So now users were asking for stuff, but then they were having it like building imagery of it, right? Like an example would be like IT would just be like, what's the policy of whatever? Like, what's our laptop policy? And it would just come back. Well, the users, once they got hold of it, were like, well, what's the laptop policy? But could you put that into an infograph? And that was just like chunking up so much more tokens. So then the usage cost went through the roof. So then they had to kind of take that back in and put in some rules of like, don't make imagery or, these types of things. And again, that's where it's important, maintenance of it, looking at how your users are prompting it. Maybe they're always asking a certain thing and you're like, well, maybe I should add some new features on that, even though that wasn't the whole point of this agent, but now they're asking things about that. Maybe I should incorporate new things, or maybe I have to tweak my rules within here based off of that. So it's one of those things that we'll have to keep coming back to, maintenance of it. And then again, we do this whole circle again every time we're looking at doing something like that. Everything is iterative here. That you're doing with AI, from building and deploying and all that fun stuff. It's a cycle that you just keep doing, right? And all encompassing the governance that you had in place. So it all has to fit in there, because you don't want to kind of stray from that, because again, regulatory issues or whatever, or laws that you might have around your data or AI are crucial. Don't boil the ocean, right? This is what I like to say to everybody. Don't think that you're just going to turn this stuff on and you're going to make all this headway and it's all going to be done in 30 days. And again, I get it. I've heard this from lots of CEOs and boards that Shareholders are breathing down our neck. We have to do something with AI. We have to get out the door with it. And I hear you. But I promise you, if you just let it rip and don't think of these things, bad things can happen. Again, I can tell you horror stories of where these kind of steps weren't put in place and they let it rip. Documents were found that people shouldn't have found. People ended up losing their jobs over it because there was no security or governance over this stuff, right? So while I hear you want to get there fast, you have to get there tactically and kind of in a phase, right? This stuff is in phases. Like I said, because of the fact that all of the stuff you don't want to boil the ocean and do it all in one way, or even building, this stuff will come over time. Kind of the 1, 2, 3, right, steps I'd like to do or say. And again, if you've already done one of these, you could skip on to the next one. But as I like to say, first and foremost is security first, right? That is the first step I believe that every organization should take with their data, understanding that the right tools are in place or the right security measures are in place for not only the data itself and the user's access to that data, but even outside of that of how they're going to use it, right? Within that, whether it's encrypting files or whatever it is, right? Access to those and the governance of that. The next is what I would say is the data, right? If the data is not good, AI will not be good, and your investment in AI will not be, it will be for nothing, right? Because no one will use it or they'll find other things to do. So that is kind of the next piece, making sure you don't have stale data, making sure that the right data is accessible or that you're going down that path. Again, I recommend a lot of folks that if you are in an on-premise instance, that you definitely look at the cloud because things are so much easier and cheaper, right, to do with AI if that data is already sitting in the cloud versus trying to do some on-premise stuff. So that is paramount next, making sure your data is good and the data you want to connect to is accurate because it will not be accurate if not. And then we get into use case development. That is kind of the next phase of where I think we should go, what I think we should understand, what are we trying to do here, what are we trying to build here, what are we trying to solve here, what are the ROI around that, and then getting training or AI literacy is kind of the next step from that, right? And again, training is something that doesn't go away just because you did your initial training, right, on whatever the LLM is of your choice, let's say Copilot, and you did a nice rollout and you did all this great training. Well, guess what? Copilot's going to get new features in 3 to 6 months, right? The super cycle I was talking about in the cycle. You don't expect someone from HR, finance to, be paying attention to all these AI blogs and whatnot. So keep that in mind that the training is ongoing, right? You're going to have to, as new features come out, you're going to have to do more training on that so your users know. Because again, you want the investment of AI. And what you don't want is that you train them on its capabilities just right now, and then in 6 months it gains like all these amazing things that could be, users could take advantage of, but that they have no idea they exist, they will not be using them, right? On that. And that's where I think monthly lunch and learns are great, or even quarterly trainings on new things are great. Again, we can help with all that fun stuff. That's what we do all the time. But again, that's crucial, right? To do that, to go down kind of that path. And again, once you have those use cases and whatnot, that will generally kind of tell you what LLM you should be going with, right? And again, those lines are blurring slightly more nowadays as all of them are getting more and more capabilities that kind of overlap. So I would say I'm not as stringent as that as I was say a year ago, because there were definite kind of differences between them. They are all kind of going in there. But yeah, that's kind of my path of that. Then once you've done all that, then I would look at building other things like agents or integrations or things like that once you've kind of gone through those steps, my opinion on this. And again, this is what I've seen success look like in within organizations, right, within that. And again, this is where we can help, right? We have done this. We've been doing this for, since ChatGPT came out. We've been doing this with customers with ChatGPT, with Copilot, with Gemini, with Claude. All of these things, we've helped them. And again, these are kind of the things that we looked at. Again, getting those ROI use cases, the data readiness, making sure your data is ready for this, the data security assessment, making sure that things are labeled appropriately, or you don't have data exposed to the whole organization, all these social security numbers, understanding that stuff. We do offer, again, company AI advisory services where they come in and plug themselves in as kind of that leadership role in there. Think of it like a VC, but for AI. where we come in and we help write the policies, we help kind of guide this ship, we help look at what does a pilot look like, what does training look like. You as an individual organization are going to be very different from someone else, right, of what that is. Again, we have user adoption services, right? Prompting 101, advanced prompting sessions. We help roll out AI in an organization. Again, we recommend like waves and things like that. We help with that, with the communications, with the email comms, the training. But we do the building of agents and standing up MCP servers and all that fun stuff and integrations into other systems. And we also do what we have is a champion program where we help train your users or certain users to be champions of AI so that they can take that torch forward and they can help and care and feed the users with AI throughout that, and a whole bunch more stuff that I didn't even talk about that we do. But we do lots of things around this space, and yeah, we're just here to help. And that's it. That's all we have today. Don't hesitate to reach out. Again, if you want to get some more information about, again, anything I covered today, don't hesitate to reach out. Or if there's an offering that you saw that was really great, we are here to help you. We are your AI advisors, help you walk through this, no matter where you're at in this journey, whether you're, I don't even know what AI is, to we're just sort of kicking the tires, to we're kind of invested in this one for whatever reason, we need help kind of deploying it, training it, or you know what, we have all this great stuff going on in AI. Everybody knows that everybody's trained up. We just don't have enough people to help build these agents or integrations. Can you come in and augment our team and help that? All the way through that, we can help you every step of the way. I appreciate everybody's time today. Have a great day and talk to you next time. Thanks.